Yo, we are on. What's up?
What's up?
Today in class, somebody asked, hey, who's this Elijah character? I'm like,
Oh, really?
Elijah character. I said, he's a character. Hey, who's this?
You said Elijah character?
And I say, yeah, he's just some dude. Man. Oh, all right.
Wait, but that's how it was asked, Elijah character?
I think who's this Elijah guy? Yeah. Dude. Maybe you were a dude.
That's funny. Okay.
Hey,
well, I don't know the context to that, but that means cool.
What is question, man? I had a question for you. Never mind. We're ready, dude. A lot of stuff happening in the world, man. It's I don't even know what to say. Honestly, I'm in like kind of a. Well, I've been golfing for 7 days. Straight up, like five rounds of golf, and so I've been kind of out of it purposefully, eating, cooking, golfing, and cooking.
Nice.
With my brother, also my nephew.
I was confused because, wait, brother and nephew, or?
Well, technically he's my nephew, but Lori just decided that he's my brother.
Yeah, because I was
so I'm like, all right. Yeah, he'll be my brother. Anyway, Mom, yeah, I'm going to get ready for the green jacket.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Green jacket?
Miguel just asked about that. The green jacket. That's what you get when you win the Masters. I did shoot. My best 9 holes was a 38. I shot on Monday. 38, man. It was a par. Yeah, it was pretty good. 36. I was 2 over par. No, it was a 35. Was par. So I was 3 over par on 9 holes. And on the back, I didn't do too bad either. But anyway, so yeah, I'm picking up a little bit.
So you got a little better?
Yeah, I feel like golfing every day really helped improve my game. And my bro is pretty, he's a really good golfer. So he gave me the tips that I needed to really up the game even more. And yeah.
So he's got a little bit of the edge.
Yeah, feels good. Sarah, Brian's welcome. But you can take the class, actually. You just watch it online. That's the beauty of it. And you can, because it's late in the afternoon, depending on the time zone you're in, you can just watch it while you're sitting back, drinking a cold beer, which my students can't do. That's one of the advantages of taking the class from home. And nothing better than taking a class while drinking a cold beer. When I was an undergrad, that's what I dreamed of all the time. Like, oh, this class would be so much better if I had a cooler next to me. Yeah.
Definitely a good combination watching your class, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, not saying that I've tried it, but I could imagine. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, I like it. Anyway, listen, man. So are you keeping up on things? The news and different things? Are you paying attention?
I was actually checking before this live stream a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't have any notifications, and I'm not actively looking, but I'm gonna make it a point to continue to do that after this, because it's useful.
Yeah,
I need to. Yeah, but I was looking on the websites. I was just looking around, on a few news sources to see what's up.
Well, one thing I want to say, we were talking about this a bit over the break, these floods in Texas, and man, just horrific, really. And floods are not uncommon in Texas. This is not like it's never happened before. Often what happens is people, when you start paying attention to things, like climate issues, the environment issues, because it's sort of ending up more often on the front pages or the headlines and the top stories kind of thing, then people pay more attention. And then it sounds like it's a new thing, and it's not a new thing, right? But these kinds of disasters, if we have flash floods, around in many, many different places, but Texas is prone to them. I mean, we have more of them these days than we did in the.
And so what exactly is going on in Texas? How bad is it? Like, what have you been
Well,
hearing?
dude, I mean, where there's still, you have, I, I don't know what the actual, I don't remember what the actual number is. Hang on, the death toll
I'm like
reaches
looking it up now.
119, but there's 173 people still missing. And the most, there were a lot of people. Wait, hang on one second.
Yeah.
Just had to sneeze. One of the really terrible things, I mean, dude, a life loss is a life loss, but when it's young kids, um, it feels more, it just feels deeper because there's a sense of an innocence, or there's just a sense of that people are in the beginning of their lives, and it's just it's horrible. So many young people, and there were these big, a lot of people camping, a lot of these like young campers. People went away for summer camp and for a week, and they were camping, and then in these valleys, and the floods just came in the middle of the night, and that's of course what sometimes happens. And then you can't. It's harder to tell people. But in any case, to warn
Are
people
these
that floods are coming, you got to get to higher ground.
right?
So
So are these floods like overflow of like lakes
yeah,
or like
yeah. Well, we're seeing more of these kinds of things when the atmosphere warms, um, and there's sudden warming. We have different climate and cloud situations in which clouds are holding just an immense amount of water, and then there are these various conditions in which it can also be released much more quickly over a short period of time. So if we track back, what's happening is that there are more and more examples really around the world in which people there are just sudden downpours of an extreme amount of water. And we're not, you know there are places when you build cities, right? You have to build cities with the idea, or urban areas, but again, rural, wherever it is where you put human beings, you have to accommodate for the fact that an extreme amount of water can fall at some moment. And what are you going to do with the excess water? Like, what's going to
right,
happen to it? Because it's going to go somewhere.
right,
And like in Florida, on the west coast of Florida, central Florida, there are all these storm drain areas, right? We have them here in State College, right near our house. There's one particular storm drain. So there's a lot of them where this one street used to flood all the time, and then they built this kind of water drainage system so that when it does flood, the water is just going to divert over to that. And it's kind of like a French drain type of thing. So they dug a massive hole and they put rocks in it, and the water percolates down, whereas it wasn't able to do that in the past. And so wherever in cities, you got to be able to get rid of the water quickly, but there's a limit. As when you have an amount of water that you didn't predict, you didn't plan for, then that water is going to go somewhere. So what's
right,
happened in certain areas in Texas, and in certain areas in rural places, is that the water finds the lowest point and it just goes, and it goes down these valleys, and wow, man, a flood can come quickly, and you can predict that it's going to happen, but oftentimes you only predict at the last minute. And what happened here was, they were able to see, like, there's a cloud system forming, and when this particular cloud system happens, and they can check, measure at some level, the moisture in the clouds. But in the right condition, the cloud will stall somewhere and drop all of that water. And these are all, people say, like, oh my God, we're always trying to predict the weather, but we do a pretty awesome job of predicting weather and predicting it far out. And so in these particular situations, it's the potential danger is that people are in these areas where
right,
the flood happens, and so they built these campgrounds on these lower valley areas, and it's fine, it's safe 99.99% of the time. But if you have a flash flood that's not predicted and that happens in the middle of the night, and you can't get word out to people,
Right.
and
But
it's a problem.
has are you aware of like anything that Trump has said about it, or like what's being done to
Well,
like what
what Trump,
efforts?
so on the left, of course, so the first idea was, okay, well, what's, this, a lot of this is connected to the National Weather Service,
Okay.
to NOAA, to FEMA, to all of these various organizations that are really responsible for predicting the weather, right? So we have,
Yeah.
wide range of budget cuts. And so, naturally people who are against Trump are going to say like, hey, like this is your
Your fault because
responsible for this, right?
right,
This is,
because you're cutting
but
funding.
you cut funding and therefore
Right.
they weren't able to notify people, but that's not true.
Mhm.
That's not what happened in this particular case. That's not why people didn't get notified. And people on the ground there are saying like, no, they had, the biggest problem in this particular case is in this area is that, yeah, it wasn't helpful. Like, it's not helpful at all. Like, and it's going to lead some of these cuts to get rescinded because, you can't take a risk on this kind of thing happening. But one thing that, that happened was that you have a warning system, right? How are you going to warn people? Well,
Yeah.
the warning system in this particular case, where most of this flooding happened, was based on these cell phones. And so, but the problem is, cell phones are very unreliable when you're in valleys and up on mountains and that kind of thing. Like, the signals aren't working,
Yeah.
aren't going to work really well. So one thing in Texas, they were, apparently going to, they could install these other warning systems, but there's a massive areas, right? So you're going to have these warning systems where these sirens go off, and the sirens go off, and that's like, get to high ground as quickly as possible, right? But they didn't invest in them, because they were investing in
Are
something
you
else,
are you
right?
talking about it says here that Mr. Trump has repeatedly proclaimed his intention to disband the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which coordinates the
Yeah,
federal response to natural disasters, and he
yeah.
called it inefficient and bungling, I guess. Wait,
But he
so he's
wasn't going to disband it. That's the thing. Like, not about disbanding. You can't disband that, So the issue is that, it's a wake up call, really, for some of these budget cuts, right? I mean, it's a
right.
wake up call, because if not this, it's going to be something else, and that's, I think, what's really important.
Right.
So,
So like a wake up cause, and we need to be
yeah, so
more
it's,
thorough at, into like investigating what should actually be cut or what shouldn't. Is that what you mean when you say
yeah,
wake up call?
yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
then here's the thing, right? So we were talking about this. I was talking about it with Lori and my brother slash nephew slash brother, that,
Your brother
say
nephew.
like, like these. So they didn't invest in these warning systems, which are, are fairly expensive. I'm sure. I don't know what they cost, but, this a siren system in all these valleys, and so then the issue is like, oh well, okay, we didn't invest there, so they made a mistake by not investing there. Well, no, they didn't make a mistake. They invested in other places. There's never enough money for all of the things that we need to spend money on, right? So
Mhm.
there's not a limited amount of revenue that we can spend. The governing bodies can spend to help save lives. So they spend it somewhere else. And like, we could imagine that people who are critical of the government would be like, oh, they wasted the money. This money isn't wasted. They didn't waste the money. Maybe they bought a new fire truck because they needed it's a different. They needed in the county. They needed a series of fire trucks or EMS, a new EMS system, or they needed air conditioning for high schools. And in Texas, it gets really hot. You got to have air conditioning, and the AC, the HVAC units were bad. The point being that you can't automatically assume that money is wasted or that was a mistake in how
Or
they
that it's not
spent
going
money.
to a place that's of importance.
That's
That you can
right. That's right. So they didn't spend it on this warning system that could have saved these lives, but they spent it on other things. And that's really, you got to have trust in people. Most of the time, people are in governing bodies and so on. They're making very complicated decisions. And so, it's just they're mostly thoughtful people who are in jobs, in bureaucracies. They're in jobs over long periods of time. They're not the politicians who are yammering away at stuff. They're people who they're engineers, and there are so many people that are thinking about this stuff, and so they spend money, and they didn't spend the money in this warning system that could have saved these lives. So it's like, okay, well, that's what life is, man. Life is about risk, and it's about mitigating risk. And you can't do it always in the right places. If we could,
Yeah.
we'd be God.
And just the statement with like you have to have trust in the government, like or you have to have trust in the decisions that people are making.
Decision makers.
And I just, man, that feels like that statement. Like how do people build? How do like civilians that feel like that don't have trust, or they feel distrust? How do we?
Yeah.
Like how is trust built? Like how do they build?
One way that's a really, really good question. Well, one way is when, the problem with the representational politics like we have, representational party politics, is every 2 years or 4 years or 5 years or whatever it is, depending on the election cycle, we have an orgy of distrust, because the candidates talk about how the other candidate is a complete idiot, and they're going to waste money, and they're the worst possible thing for the people in this district. And then the other one says the same thing about them. So you got two people that are just beating each other up like, two rams, right? With bighorn sheep that boom, boom, boom. And then one of them is going to get elected. Well, now you've sowed all these seeds of distrust. And so that's part of the issue that we have as living in these representational political democracies. It's a loss of distrust. And then when you get somebody like a Trump, who just that's his currency, man. His currency is getting people really angry.
Right.
I mean, same with the Democrats, by the way. I mean, it is, but Trump, it's like he takes it up a notch, man. I gotta say, he takes it up a notch.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like how would you say like he easily calls blame to like certain like groups or organizations that, like how you were saying, like dividing, or
I just think he takes it up a notch. That's all. It's everybody. Well, they're all. That's the name. What I just described is what goes on with everybody, Republicans, Democrats, whatever. But as a human being, what I experience, what I see with him, is that he just ramps it up, man. Like Spinal Tap. Their amps were really loud. But other bands, they could take their amps to 10. But Spinal Tap could crank their amps up to 11. If they were that much louder. You don't know what I'm talking.
Can you explain? You said Spinal Taps? I'm confused.
Spinal Tap is a movie. It's a mockumentary.
Oh, got it. Okay, haven't seen
it. Yeah, it's about a heavy metal band. Yeah, they had the cursed drummers. It's a really funny movie, y'all. I highly, highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. And Fear of a Black Hat and Spinal Tap. All right. Have you ever seen Fear of a Black Hat?
No, I haven't seen that either. What is that also? What's that about? Is that another mockumentary? Or
it's a mockumentary. It's a hip hop mockumentary.
No, I haven't seen
Spinal Tap is a heavy metal documentary.
Okay.
Which is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I do not watch Bill Maher. And the reason I don't watch Bill Maher is because he just seems really mean. He's just like a mean person, man. I don't like mean people. I just am not into that.
Bill.
Yeah, it just feels. And then the whole Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni thing. I didn't follow that. I don't follow that kind of stuff. But So I don't have an opinion on it. It seems like what I have followed, the tiny, tiny little bit that I followed, is that they both got stuck in something that feels like they started making accusations, and then suddenly you're going to have a winner and a loser, or you're both going to lose, actually. But I don't know. I don't know.
So I just looked it up. It says Bill Maher is like an American. He's a comedian. So are you saying you're not a fan of like comedy that's like Schadenfreude, or I think that's the term for it, where it's like comedy at somebody else's expense, or
Yeah. And I don't like that at all. Mind you, some stand-ups can do a really fun job with that.
right?
It's good. I was talking to my
Mhm.
class today about just like, making jokes about certain groups, and you can do that in a way that I was talking to these the students from the Gulf, right? Emirati and Kuwaiti and Saudi, and like, I could make some jokes about Arab Muslims, and they would be, and they could be offensive or they could be funny. And the one dude was like, I would probably see it as funny because I just don't have any problem with anything. I don't have a very low tolerance, a very high tolerance for offense, right?
Right.
And I said, well, you probably would be more likely to see it as funny coming from me because I have such an affinity and an understanding of would and would not be likely be offensive to somebody,
Right. Right.
because that
But
comes
you're,
from
yeah,
experience.
right. It's
But
like the
but
social
if I
thermometer
go
reading
ahead,
it.
go ahead, yeah.
Oh, no, you're saying just like, you have a social measure, or like a thermometer, right? You can like test the waters, what the right temp is,
Yeah,
rather
it's
than
that, and it's also just there's an edging. There's just things you can joke about and things you can't. It's true in every
yeah,
culture, right?
yeah,
Uh, you just if you're inside the culture and you're at a humor level in the culture, right? So if you're a part of queer culture, for example, and you've been around, you're in with a lot of people and they're making jokes about queer culture and they're talking about different funny things. You just learn what the joke. You learn how far you can push something, and then you learn how far you can push something in mixed company. Not
right,
to, because there's one thing, like, it's one thing when everyone's of the same, whatever the demographic, the sociological address is of that person. That's one thing to joke at that level, but there's another level at which it's once it's a mixed company, right? So,
right.
well, you learn that if you're around it long enough, you kind of get a sense for what that is, right?
Yeah. You
So,
start
so
to
I
go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go
Oh
ahead.
no, I was just gonna reflect, but just the landscape, like the culture. You understand you start when you're within an in group. Like what the sensitivities are, or
Yeah,
mm,
yeah.
and then those sensitivities change a little bit when you're when an
Yeah,
in group and an out group are together, because some people
yeah.
don't have the permission slip to like I don't know. I think I hear what you're saying. I think I
And then here's the other thing. You also know when you're with a group of people, let's say there are 10 people in a room. Like I'm in a room with 10 Arab Muslims, right? And I'm going to make a joke about Allah. I mean, just something about Islam, you know. Well,
hmm
if I'm part of the if I'm in part of the community. Hey, by the way, Axel, I'm going to respond to your question. Uh, if I'm part of the community, I also know how many, if I make that joke that I'm thinking about making or the comment, I know how many of those 10 people are likely to be offended. You see, right? It's just not just who will be offended. It's like who's more likely to be offended. What are the issues of offense, right? And so
Okay.
you have to learn that, man. It just takes a lot to be able to joke around on things.
When you say issues of offense, what
Yeah,
do
whatever it
you
is, man. Yeah, whatever it is you're joking about. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, right? You know, like, dude, you're around your black friends and you know the jokes that fly around and you know, like, when you are, or you're around a bunch of mixed people like yourself, right? And you know, like, people can joke about it, but there's a couple things, like, there might be a nerve in a lot of people. Like, it's a little bit raw. Like, dang, you touch that, you're like,
It gets a little
so you gotta,
sensitive.
a
Right.
little sensitive, but you know, it's okay if somebody says it. It's less okay if somebody else says it, and you
Right.
know that, and that's part of what it is, man.
Mhm. Yeah, like, yeah, can I almost, I mean, unless you are really insightful on the landscape, like you're saying, you know, the cultural awareness that you have, but if you don't
Yeah.
have that, usually it's only the in group that can, you know,
Yeah.
like, that can say the joke,
Yeah.
you know, because they have like the
Yeah.
permission. It
And
makes
then
sense.
and
Yeah.
and then people, you know, they want to know, like, well, why can't I tell that joke? It's like, well, you can tell the joke if you can tell the joke. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, you
Right.
can tell it if you can, if that makes sense, right?
Right.
Bro, your
Yeah.
internet's really slow, man. You're breaking up?
It is really.
Well, you're slow here. I don't know if you're slow on the stream. On the
Maybe
stream,
Jeff can. Because
is Elijah pausing on the stream? Maybe it's just here. Maybe it's me. Damn.
I can see you. I. Hmm.
Yeah. All right. It's just
Sure.
me.
I'll try to.
Anyway, no, you're good. There's nothing you can do, man. You're good. Uh anyway, but wait, back to Axel. I did not use interviews from David Hoffman. I don't know who David Hoffman is. I wonder if I should know that.
I'll look him up. He is an actor. He's in
Uh,
movies like Remember Sunday, There's Johnny, um,
I did want to.
A
Jason,
Night in
Jason,
A Night in Casablanca. I don't know.
I did want to just say that sometimes it's a little disconcerting when, with online online jokes and rhetoric and stuff. Some people are like totally okay with jokes as long as they're offensive towards a different group. And then once it gets once their group is attacked in the same exact way, then they're like super offended. In that aspect, like I just wish people would be a little bit more like Sam, where they just want it to be fair for everybody. So if you can make that joke, I can make this joke. If you can't make that joke because I don't like that joke, then I'm not going to make one that's offensive to you, kind of a thing. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Like fairness across. I think that's what Kevin Hart like put as a preface to one of his stand-ups. He was like, "Hey, listen, and he was like, everybody is gonna get it, essentially."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, and there's no need there really is. Oh, so wait, we were going back to Bill Maher, right? That's how we got onto this. And I was saying that
oh, like Schadenfreude. And,
I don't, he's not, it's not about him critiquing people. It's just being so mean, man. Like, and I used to think he was pretty funny. And also, uh, I, it feels like he used to sort of come at things. If he was going to take on a topic, I didn't know what he was going to say, how he was going to be funny about the topic or critique the topic or something. I used to feel like I just didn't know. And so I'd be like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. Wonder how what he's got in line here." Because sometimes he seemed like he was really liberal, sometimes really conservative or libertarian or that kind of thing. And I like that. That's pretty good. But increasingly, I just find that I've watched some things of his and just went like, "Oh God, that's just so."
Mhm.
This is mean about toward other people, and especially, I don't like, and I feel it's similar sometimes with some of these other late night things or people who are, I kind of, it's fun
Like
if it's
what?
like the president or something, because you're a public figure in that way, so just, yeah, you're allowed to make fun of whoever's in the White House. You can make fun of them. It's all
Yeah.
fair game. But
Do you have, it makes me wonder, you know, I think this question came up in a dialogue today. Some participant brought up the idea of you just saying it's so mean just made me think of the idea of this, like the snowflake, you know, because someone
mm,
from a dialogue brought that in, you know, like how
yeah,
snow, and it's like, oh, what's the line between, you know, like offense or like people being able to speak their mind and say what they
yeah,
want to say versus like that's
yeah,
offensive and we should be more aware of, you know, what we're saying. And
yeah. That's a good point. Uh, I'm definitely not a snowflake. I'll tell you, you
oh
know that.
my gosh, I wasn't saying that
No,
you
no,
were.
no, no, no. No, I know you weren't. I'm just
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
that out there as myself. So I'm definitely not a snowflake.
No,
Uh,
yeah. No.
I think but but I just
Well,
I don't like meanness, and I
yeah.
don't like meanness for the
Like as
that
a so
comes
how do
in.
from a sociologist, as a like the perspective of a sociologist, how do you see that well like those verbal attack like how are you seeing it deconstruct maybe like society or like communities' ability to like work together if um I guess like using the word meanness, you know, and like how does that
Yeah,
impact,
yeah.
you know, how we you know
Well, yeah. No, that's a really interesting. I think
just
part of
just
the
so it
issue
wasn't like
is
Sam saying it and it's more of like
yeah,
sociologists saying it so you could like separate, you know.
yeah, like have fun with something before. Yeah, I think like what I for me meanness, it's really directed at a person, right? Or people who think a very specific way, not in or even in a general way. People think in some way. It's like you're basically telling. What I hear from Bill Maher a lot is like he's kind of basically uh, telling anybody who thinks a certain way, like you're an idiot, like you're just stupid. It's like, oh come on, man, like don't. I mean, you don't need to do that, right? It just feels wrong, and I don't
Mhm.
like that. It doesn't. It feels
Right.
yeah.
I mean, I see that as like it completely just shuts down any um it just shuts the person down completely. I don't know, just
Yeah.
like or it builds like there you go, there's your conclusion, you're stupid. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
It's
see
not
that.
even funny. What I hear some of the times with him is that people don't really even laugh. Like because it's like you don't even know if you can laugh. It's just kind of like ouch. Oh God. You know.
Right.
So
And it and
that's
it's
me. Yeah.
that's way different than, you know, like a comedian commenting on like maybe a stereotype or something that's like generally understood about like a certain group that then they turn into like comedy, you know? You know, and then like I think it
Yeah.
goes back to what
Yeah.
Jeff was saying and then like pointing out all the stereotypes in a funny angle, you
Yeah,
know, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, they do this, you guys do that, versus like,
Yeah,
oh,
that's
you're
right.
just
Yeah,
stupid or
that's
you're an
right.
idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what Miguel is saying kind of like it's like condescending humor.
Right.
And that and and I don't yeah, that's very problematic for me, man, you know. Um because as someone who's very public about a lot of things, it's really easy to find things that I say and critique them. I mean, it's so
Right.
going to be so simple, man. So I just do not want to do that.
Yeah. And especially like I feel like I mean, just how I see your role as a professor, you know, and constantly trying to make sure that students aren't feeling embarrassed or, you
Yeah.
know, like due to your own, like, you know, based on like how you respond to them. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
you're hyper aware of that, you know, just
Yeah.
'cause you don't want that student to feel like the gotcha moment, like you always talk about. So I feel like you're hyper aware of like, oh, trying not to be a certain type of way.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, which makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I have another one. Um, Trump's back out with these tariffs in a really, really significant way. And
I saw that too.
yeah, I'm wondering, if anybody, how many people have sort of gotten online and read the op-ed of the opinion pieces from in countries that were really going to get hammered or Trump's threatening to hammer with tariffs. Like, I've been carefully monitoring what Koreans are saying, for example, and
What?
Japanese, and just the implications for these tariffs and what it might mean. And like, man, it's like, first off, we have no idea what it's going to mean for us. So, but how much could really mess things up. But I'm just paying attention at that level. Do you ever think about that, bro? Do you ever have you gone to any? Do you ever go on to the main newspapers of countries around the world and just see what they're saying about what English speaking newspapers? Just see what they're saying about life.
No, but I should. I feel like I should start.
Is there like a website or a resource that has like a bunch from all over the world? Because I know for American news, usually more conservative sided, you have the Drudge Report, which you just go to drudgereport.com and then they get a bunch of articles from a bunch of different websites. It'd be sweet if there was like a website for, all of the major newspapers from all over the world. Because the main thing for me is I look at like the France 24 YouTube channel or RT, or I have to like go to more YouTube channels that report on news from other countries' perspectives, but I don't have any like articles.
Yeah, well, one thing that you can just do, like here, this is the Jakarta Post, and so you want to get news from Indonesia, go here. Here's the top. This would be what you'd want to kind of look at, right? Here's the top story, right? And this is the serious story, man. And this is like
Are you about to share your screen, or are you?
No, I wasn't gonna share my screen because I don't
sharing
think
it on the
can.
stream right now. It's on one of the corners
So
over there.
ASEAN is is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. ASEAN. People say it differently, but basically, look, they have the world. We're not the only important trading party here. I mean, obviously, the United States is really important, but it's like the other side of the planet. They got a lot of stuff going on, man, and so they're calling. The Malaysia is calling for much stronger trade deals, like straight trade pacts and trade deals, but in Asian nations.
Mhm.
And like, we would want to say, if you're like, you're concerned about the United States, you want to be like, well, hang on a second, man. What's that mean? Right? What are the implications for the United States? And then, you want to read that. And I've been, I did I spoke at a couple conferences. When I say in conference, there was like it was called Ad Asia. It's the largest advertising conference in Asia, and where the United States is just not part of the conversation. There were very few Americans there, and the United States is just not part of the conversation. Western Europe is really mostly not part of the conversation. And you just hear people talking these were like the big names, big companies, the major corporations. And they're talking about Asia.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so, and it really, perks my ears up to say like, they got a lot going on just among these Asian nations. It's a huge number of people, over about half the world's population. Okay, it includes China and India. They were very much part of this, and it's like, all right, well, what do I need to pay attention to as an American? And so if I'm thinking about these tariffs and I'm thinking, yeah, America first, right? We need to look out for America. What are the implications for this? And so these are the kind of places where you want to go. You want to read like, oh, hang on a second. Well, what are they saying? Right? This is this gathering in Kuala Lumpur. It's like, what are they?
And where is that place again? Like, what's the website? What's the site?
Well,
Or is there?
I'm gonna send it to you on Slack.
This is, yeah.
And so, like, from what you've been hearing, you said you heard some of what Korea's been saying. You've been watching that closely. What are what are you hearing from Korea?
Well, I'm hearing that. Well, it's not just Korea, but all over Asia. What I'm reading is that people are starting to say, okay, hang on, let's look down the road 10 years or 20 years, and let's start thinking about what different trade packages are going to look like for us. If we like really pay attention to us, and we really pay attention to our nations, like what's going to happen? What could we do that would better position us and bring us together as a solid block in response to the United States, right?
This is making a lot of countries look inward.
Yeah, look inward and look at the nations right around them and say, hang on, the world doesn't have to be organized this way. You know, the United States is not going to be on top forever. I mean, that's nature. This is life, right?
Yep.
You know, we're heading into a century in which, you know, the 20th century was the century of the United States. And but lesser degree Western Europe, but in the United States, right? The 21st century is probably the century of Asia. And so it's like, all right, you want to be thinking about that and looking backwards, and just you may make an argument for high tariffs. I'm not making an argument for no tariffs or whatever, but what I'm saying is it's so interesting for me to jump on these other newspapers around the world and see what they're saying, because I've had the experience in person of sitting at these conferences and realizing, you know what? None of these people are talking about the United States. There's nothing to do with the U.S. This is really about them. And they're throwing numbers around, profits like billion here and 10 million or 100 million there. And like, this is serious, right? And it doesn't involve my country. And so it's just worth thinking about in that way.
Does that make you nervous? Or, like it's leading countries to not collaborate with the U.S. because
it doesn't make me nervous because I'll be dead soon enough. But
but I mean, if you
don't have kids, for you though, no, it doesn't make me nervous anyway, because that's just how life is gonna roll out, right? Mm-hmm. We are not. This is not the century of the United States. It's not. You can't. It can't be. That's not how life is, man. Because what the things that made us the dominant world power, the structures that built this system are the structures that aren't going to be able to adapt as the system needs to transform. That's how all systems are. They eventually stagnate, and they want to reproduce, but in the end, they're going to stagnate. So it's like, it's not gonna do it.
Like just
you're
like
gonna need something else.
Looking at this right now, it's essentially like not, I'm not sure, but like not good for the U.S. The fact that these countries are looking in and not trying to collaborate because of these tariffs.
Yeah. Well, we say this is like the BRIC nations, and Brazil, Russia, India. You can't. It's not that it's not good. It's like I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I think I'm trying to be really careful about this, but you don't want to follow populist rhetoric. You will notice that the people who have the most to gain and to lose, okay? The people who have the most to gain and lose, like the really wealthy, the heads of the biggest, wealthiest people, they're rarely populist. I mean, you have Elon Musk, who's a fucking lunatic, right? But they're not populist because populism doesn't win the day. Yeah, you
And
want
who?
to be really thoughtful.
Okay. And who specifically isn't populist, you're saying?
Well, the wealthy, the elites, the people with the most to lose. You don't hear them making arguments. Well, we're going to boost these tariffs up because these people owe us money. And you don't hear them doing that, man. You want to be very thoughtful about stuff. So anyway, the point being, I don't think it's snarky to say, or anti-American to say, like, yeah, we'll be in a new world. Be really careful. We want to be careful as we move forward. Anyway, my point is, this is why I read foreign newspapers a lot. Now they're
Right.
the English speaking newspapers, but I just pulled it. Jakarta Post is just one of many that I read, but the Jakarta Post is actually, I mean, this is the main English speaking newspaper in Indonesia. It's very independent, man. They identify, hang on, I think they do. They call themselves fiercely independent. Yeah.
Oh,
Fierce, still
Jakarta.
bold,
Okay.
and fiercely independent. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I see it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Malaysia
So,
calls for stronger inter-Asian trade amid tariffs
yeah,
uncertainty.
all sorts of things.
Right.
Man. It's just
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
It's also fun to read these newspapers, right? To read from around the world, just to see,
Yeah,
what's happening.
of course.
What are people saying? And
This is cool.
Um,
Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that.
a little while ago, a student who's taking the summer course asked Elijah if you could bring up some of the questions that you guys had during your discussion yesterday. What have you guys been chatting about? What's the discussions been this summer with the students and groups?
Mm. Just trying to, talking about what they're learning from class. A lot of times we get comments about just the different way that Sam approaches teaching. I think that's always brought up, at least in the beginning discussions, because maybe it's a little different in the second one. But they love to talk to communicate. We had a discussion on like, okay, what was education like for you in high school, or like what's different about your college classes here versus like the way that Sam teaches, what's positive, like what are the benefits, and like they talk about engagement, how they're able to engage, things that we've talked about on this stream before about like your approach to teaching. They've definitely loved to comment on that. And then today, we kind of got into um, the idea between like old generation and like the older generation saying like, oh, younger generation are like a bunch of snowflakes, or and just like seeing what their experiences are within their sociological address, like what are they experiencing with those conversations, or like what are their families saying, about that, or and just trying to continue to to figure out what intrigues
and,
them about the classes.
It definitely sounds like
and are
class
people
3 stuck hard to them, because that's class 3 was who's getting offended. So it sounds like that was a class that really struck them.
Yep.
Oh, we talked about that in class today too. Yeah,
I was under the impression they were only watching one video a week at first, so I only watched the first video, but now I'm finishing out the last 4. I just thought it was one video, but it's 4. I didn't know that.
It's either 4 or 3, depending on whether we have an exam. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, weeks
By the way, in
3
the
and
chat,
weeks 3 and 6 we have 3.
I just put one of the newspapers I read from Nigeria in the chat.
Oh, cool.
And
Which
it's kind of interesting.
in the
Because
YouTube
you gotta get. I pull news out of Nigeria, man. This is like really important.
copy that too. Slack it to me. So
Yeah. Premium times. It is. Hey, so the conversation went well though?
Yeah, the conversation went well. I wish I it was yesterday. That was the conversation we had that Madison was in, one of the students, and
Yeah.
but I didn't write down. Next time I'll do that. I didn't write down the questions that um that we talked about, but I'll make sure to do that next time so I can bring them to the live stream. Because at the moment, it's hard to remember all the questions that
Yeah,
they had.
that's hard.
Yeah,
Hard for me to remember questions I had this morning.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Eric, so in the past week, I played 5 rounds of golf, and wait, I'll tell you my scores. Here we are. Ready? 5 different golf courses. All right. This one shot an 89. But I had 3 mulligans that I gave myself, so it's not really an 89. But whatever. What are you gonna do? This one I shot an 89. I had 1 mulligan, so that might have been like a 91. This one I shot a 91. I don't think I had. I didn't have any mulligans, though. I played 2 balls twice, and I used the highest of my score. That's a 91. That's pretty good. For me, anyway. I shot another 91. That was kind of a tough course. And then I shot a 38 on a front 9. So, Eric, I rocked it. Oh, you played 3 rounds in Central Ireland. Did you play were they links courses? Or I think that's what they call them, where they're really tough, rough, man. Links courses, by the way, Elijah, are the rough. When you get off the fairway, the grass is really long, and you just basically got to be ready to lose a lot of balls, or walk around in the grass and find other people's balls that they lost.
What's the fairway?
Fairway is the relatively short grass in the middle where you're trying to keep your ball in that fairway. Okay. And it could be 20 yards wide or 40 yards wide, or even 50 sometimes. It could be really wide.
Yeah.
But either way, for some of us, even if it's 50, it doesn't mean we can keep it in there. But
are you I've heard people talk about Top Golf. Do you like that? I've never played, but
Top Golf?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know what that is.
Okay. I think it's it's like an activity. It's not mini golf, but I think it's a thing that people pay for to go do.
Oh.
It's like
oh yeah, I think it's like electronic golf.
Right, something like that.
Yeah. I think there might be a place in town.
I was trying to think about what we talked about these past 2 days. And one thing is cool. It's great when we have the international students really get to trade cultures, and some of the conversations were around how does your religion impact who you can be around, or what, for example, some we had some Muslim students that were in the dialogue speaking about how they can only form friendships with, let's say, if they're male, all males, females, all female relationships, and you can't intermingle. And I think that was really interesting for some students to hear, or even today, in a Korean household, a student was speaking about her sister, who's a twin, who's literally 1 minute old, and if she would have followed traditional standards, she would have to listen to her sister, even though there was a difference in age by 1 minute. At least that's what she was saying. So really fascinating parts of their lives based on their culture or religion.
It's just really interesting to have that to wonder the degree to which our most intimate beliefs about the creator, right, or those religious beliefs keep us locked into, not even consciously, right, but keep us in relationships that are with people who mostly think about what we believe.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
mean, with religion, it's huge, man. And
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
I think about religion,
You
I
have to
think about
abide by, and like how that impacts what you have to abide by, or like what you have to like the rules you have to follow, and how that you may or may not be exposed to certain things because of that.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Well, look, man, it. You think about these are the most intimate questions that we can ask ourselves, right? They're not the religious questions or spiritual questions, but let me just say religious questions. They get mixed up with one another. For
Right.
most of us anyway, we're trying to answer spiritual questions, but we do it with religious answers, if that makes
Right.
sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the
Yeah, that makes
spiritual
sense.
questions, yeah, it's like, what's my spirit, my this the essence of Sam? What is that? Like, what is the essence of Sam? Where did it come
Mhm.
from, and where's it going, and how is it connected with all the other essences around me?
Right.
And then that brings in God and creation and that sort of thing,
Right.
right? But then I answer instead of,
Like how's it influenced by what religious structure?
yeah,
You know?
exactly. Well, that's what happens. It becomes the only answer I have because it's so ethereal. It's so difficult to come up with some kind of response, right? Any kind of response that makes sense, that's some kind of narrative response, right? So it makes sense. It's a narrative response. It's not just a feeling. It's not just sensing something. It's something I can put into words. And so it's like this, a sequence of thoughts that follow one another, right? And it's a narration. So the only one, at the moment I do that, now I've moved into the realm of religion, right? It's because narration means something that I can share with somebody else. And when I share that with somebody else, that means that they can share it back to me. And then we can start building some kind of theology that, or some ritualistic organizational structure that makes sense. And now
Right.
I've moved into the territory of religion, which is, the way groups of people respond to these ethereal questions that can't be answered.
Right.
And
And
dude, by
then
the
like
way,
as
that,
you build on it, like then you're creating commit like now you like it gets so detailed and specific, and like
yeah,
what commitments do you have
yeah.
now that you've shared these values and you're building on, like now you have different
It,
commitments, different
dude, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That's a really great point. Yeah, because the moment you and I share something together, the sharing, the agreement is actually a commitment. If we agree on something, we're committed to holding that together. Now I can't
Right.
waver from that because I've already agreed with you to hold that. So if I go over here, I've lost that agreement, and then
Right.
it's jeopardy, and that's a problem. And so here we go. Right.
Right. And that's what brought the students to talk about, like, one of the American students speaking about, yeah, I have female friends and they're some of my best friends, and then one of
Yeah.
the Muslim students was like, actually, like, I don't have any female friends,
Yeah. None.
or, um, and just, it's like, well,
That's actually a really such an interesting point. Yeah, no female friends, which means they don't know anything about. I mean, the complications of it, right?
right,
And is that a good thing or is it a bad thing?
right.
Because
And
bro, your generation and younger, your your love lives are in a or dating lives are in a complete shambles, man. Everyone's just trying to figure it all out, and it's such a mess. Everybody I talk to, it's like, oh my god, what a mess. But
right,
I don't hear that from students, Muslim students, for example, from the Middle East or Indonesia or whatever. I don't hear the same kind of thing. So
right.
it's like it's not so messy. That's like, all right, maybe that's
That's
just
what
better.
that's what they talked about in the dialogue. The
Yeah.
American student was like, yeah, sometimes you do notice eventually there's drama, when it's
Yeah.
um, when it's
That's great.
co-gender,
That's great.
and the
Yeah.
Muslim student was like, yeah, that's also another reason, I'm away from all of that drama, or I'm like I'm
Yeah.
separated, I'm distant from that drama, you
Yeah. I'm
know.
just hanging out
Um,
with my boys. Well, what do we do? Well, Sunday we go play soccer, and we have all these soccer leagues. The Omanis and the Emiratis are
Right.
battling out the Saudi teams, all that kind of stuff, right? The the Malaysians, that's awesome. Yeah, so I don't know.
It was cool to hear from another student who was Saudi, and how it was less strict for her growing up, but she still ended up following a lot of values that were instilled, but it just wasn't pressured. There was the freedom to explore, but still ultimately ended up following the values that she grew up in.
Well, cool. It makes sense, man.
Right.
So we started this with this idea of how much religion then becomes this kind of like a wall, right? An obstacle because you're thinking these questions are the most intimate questions we can ask ourselves, right? They get answered by religion. There's not much more. I mean, okay, there are other intimate ones, but we don't answer them in a group, right? So
we don't answer them in a group.
No, I mean, like the intimate questions about our sex lives, for example, and what that's all about. And it's like, well, those are pretty intimate, but we're not. Well, I'm not following a whole group of people, like philosophy based on that, right? In the way that we do with religion. And those are pretty serious questions, man. When we're talking about God, and we're talking about making the right decision so that God is happy with us. You know what I mean? That God doesn't punish us, because they got all these religions that believe in this punishing God. I was like, but he loves us, but he's willing to punish us. Well, that's pretty intimate, man. You don't want to mess that up. And so then we're going to, I can't be associating with people who might think, really differently from how I think. And so I can't do that. So I got to, hold that down, man, really hard.
Yeah. And no, it's interesting. That's really like you're breaking down a lot of what they were saying yesterday, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. All right, well,
it's cool.
I like it. Hey, right now I'm looking at the stream, and we only have 7 people watching. That's what I'm seeing. That's not very many. That's not very it's not very many people. I'm really surprised. Well, I'm not surprised. Well, I am surprised.
What is it usually?
Well, in the summertime, it's been like 20 to 30, but it was just a few minutes ago, it was like at 26 or 30, and then it just slowly dropped down to 8. So whatever we were talking about, people were like, yeah, enough of that.
Done with that.
Yeah, that's funny, man.
We got to figure that out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come up with. Maybe I should just do a golf channel, man.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I think more golf comedy. Maybe.
Yeah. Mr. Rashid, nice to see you. Yeah. All right, we're back up to 14. All right.
It fluctuates.
I think that's kind of what it is, Yeah, everyone's people are what it is, Eric, is that once I started talking about golfing and I read out my golf scores, people are like, all right, man, I'm gonna have to get out and get to the practice range. So people started bolting from the stream.
They're trying to compete with your scores.
Yeah, dude, it won't be difficult. The thing is, man, it's like I'm always talking about my mulligans. See, what happens in golf is what you're supposed to. It's they call it the so-called gentleman's game, not gentlewomen's game, but gentleman's game. Like they're the rules, right? You start with your ball, you hit your ball, wherever you hit it, that's the ball you play. And there are all these rules for what you do if you hit it out of bounds, or you hit it in the water, or you hit it, whatever, behind you. Like, it's really easy to really mess it up in a tree, God knows what, or you lose it. Anyway, but a lot of times for me, golfing has been this thing where I like go out. I spend a lot of time at the driving range and the chipping green and the putting green because I'm just trying to improve my game. I'm not really worried about my score. I don't really care about a score, and I often don't keep score. But so therefore, if I hit a bad ball, if I've got this really nice lie on ball, and I'm like, oh, okay, man, this is like, I'm gonna hit this, see if I can whack this thing up on the green. And I whack it and it goes 20 yards. I'm like, let me drop another ball and try it again, man. Like, come on, this is fun, right? This is fun. But that's not part of the rules. So you have to count for that in your score, right? Because if I could just keep dropping balls until I hit a good shot, I could probably score par on most every hole, So that's the thing, man. So you gotta
was that always your sport?
no.
Did
It
you
wasn't
have a
my
sport growing up?
baseball and football were my two sports.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was just curious. We're talking about sports, and I was, and I thought I heard you say that golf was like something you recently got back into.
Yeah, it was a sport of mine, but I was never really. I was a pectory golfer.
Victory.
Pectory is Korean for I was a hundreder. A hundred person.
Oh yeah, you were a novice.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of vibes.
So.
Mm-hmm. What this is? I mean, we're off. We're kind of off the track here. What was your position in football?
I played wide receiver and cornerback or safety.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Born in the 90s. How you doing? Nice to see you.
That's cool.
Yeah. But it was. I enjoy. I was very much a jock when I was young. Yeah.
Got you. Okay.
So,
like one of the like popular jocks, like popular high school.
No, I wasn't. I was in retrospect, probably more popular because I was in a rock band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
with the long hair, like the same vibe from your like first few years at Penn State. With the
yeah. Born in the 90s, Sean. Yeah, and I never got back to you. And the reason I didn't get back to you is because I want to talk. The reason I didn't is because I spent my brother showed up and we spent 7 days golfing, and I just haven't. I got to go through. I got probably 200 emails to get to, so I'll be in touch, man. We'll schedule a time. Yeah. What were you saying, by the way, bro?
No, I was
Arnica,
just gonna.
nice to see you, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if you were at the Penn State gym.
You just cut out.
Yeah, you just cut out, man.
Oh, okay. No, I was wondering if you were a basketball. I was gonna invite you to some one-on-one. Okay. Yeah, at the PS.
Basketball was never a big game. I only played it as a team sport for 2 years. It was never.
Okay.
I just didn't have enough time to. I was doing other things, right? I was a musician, so a lot of time that other kids would have spent practicing.
You were at band practice, yeah.
Yeah, I was at band practice. I mean, that was the main thing that I did. Or I was doing other stuff that may or may not have been legal. And so it was easier to do playing music than it was to do playing sports, right? So
right. Yeah.
And I was working, man. I was always working, starting from the age of 12. I was always holding down jobs, spent a lot of time working. So I didn't have time for every sport. Like basketball takes a lot of time. Like the thing I could never master was dribbling without looking at the ball.
Okay.
And I mean, I can do it for a couple dribbles, but after that, the ball kind of gets away from me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a thing where you just have to dribble five
Yeah,
or six or 10,000 times, man, until you can just be moving the ball and not think about it. I can throw a ball up in the air and catch it mostly without looking at it. I can throw it up in the air and kind of know right where it's going to come down, because I did that all the time as a kid.
right,
But
right.
now with the basketball, man, you know how can you do that with the basketball?
Dribbling's a tough. I mean, my handles aren't great, but they're average. I would say below average. I don't
Mm.
practice enough, but they're decent. They're okay.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
as a recreation, like a person that does it recreationally.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I'm a point guard. That's a point guard
Yeah.
skill. You really got to handle the ball. Hmm.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I always wanted to be able to do that. Even today, I have a basketball. I've been contemplating how many times would I have to dribble to be able to walk down the street or across a basketball court, bring the ball up court without looking at the ball.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about doing that at some point. Maybe when I retire, I'll do it.
That'd be cool to see, like walking up and down, College and Beaver, just like what's
I could
up.
do it during
Just
Social
dribbling.
19. We have carpeting on the floor. I
Yeah,
could just like dribble the ball. Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
vibe. That'd be a style. I could see that
Yeah.
aesthetic.
That'd be cool.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Huh.
that's
All
funny.
right.
I
Yeah.
have some
Hey,
questions from
someone asked it. We have like 15 minutes left. Someone asked, put a couple questions out there that we can respond to from the news or whatever, and then we'll go. But I really want to, unless Jeff or
I have a
Elijah, you have a
couple.
couple questions.
So this is
All right,
from
go ahead, man.
This is from last week. It's on the stream, so if you're watching, it'll pop up in a second. It was from Axel. He asked during office hours number 7 he asked if you'd ever heard of the Enabling Act of 1933. Essentially, it was the law that gave the German cabinet, most importantly the chancellor, who is Hitler, the power to make and enforce laws without the involvement of any other part of the government. And then his question from that was, do you think Trump is headed in that direction with how he's been using more executive power? Or do you think it's just natural that presidents over the past few decades especially have been just trying to get more and more power from the executive?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because the Enabling Act, what I know of it, it was the act in Germany. It was the act that gave Hitler power, man. I mean, that was the act, right? That just, and you can make forget about Hitler as what we know from 1943, whatever. Later, you think about the situation that Germany was in 1933 and the need to bring all the parties and different people on board and to make some very, very difficult decisions to move the country to get out of this like deep recession and kind of fight back against some of the pressures that were put upon Germany by other nations. In particular, the UK, and Britain, and France, and so on. I think that man, that's like such a loaded question, man. If I'm really do I think that Trump is headed there, right? Well, it seems like in a way he is. I mean, he is there because he's already really. The Supreme Court just ruled yesterday. They gave him, like permission to cut all these, basically the freedom to cut all this, these jobs and budgets in the government. I mean, there's so much, man. It seems like we're already sort of there, right? It was not a single act, though. That's the key. The Enabling Act was an act. And I think it's just kind of is starting to happen. But how much further will it go? I don't know, man. That's a real.
My biggest concern seems to be related to the 14th Amendment, because we talked about birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
I still need to do more research on this topic. Don't get me wrong, but just the way that it's coming across to me, it's like, hold on a second. We're having an executive order that's more or less changing one of the articles in an amendment.
Yeah.
How is that constitutional? And to me, it doesn't feel like it. But I could be missing something.
It never. No, it never is really. But here's the point, right? This is what the literalists of the Constitution. I mean, life is different. Life changes over time. So the Second Amendment, it was really easy to give everyone the right to arm bears or bear arms or whatever, right? And back when, the guns that people had 250 years ago, right? So it's very different now. And then do you want to believe that, the people who wrote that document what would they say about where we're at today? And, this is the thing. And so it's not difficult to imagine. We've amended the Constitution. We've amended but man, how much do we amend it, and what does that mean? And immigration was very different, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago. So I don't know. That's the thing. I could make arguments in every direction, whichever one I want to make, I could make. So
all right, we'll go to another question.
Probably not very well though, but yeah.
Anyway,
so I don't know, man. I don't know where we're gonna go, and I try to keep it. I try to not to lose my mind on it. All right, hang on. Born in the 90s. Born in the 90s. Oh, I like that, man. I got questions. When was the moment that got you into sociology? What was the moment that made you say, "Oh, shit, I need to do something"? It wasn't sociology. It was, for me, it was that I was increasingly finding myself in situations where I did not have anything to contribute to conversations and debates and arguments that people were having around me. And I didn't have anything because I just didn't really understand the world very well at all. And so I had kind of dropped out of a 4-year school, enrolled in a 2-year school, thinking I'd get my 2-year degree. And then in the middle of that very first 10-week term, I dropped half my classes. I just stopped going to them. And I was really on the verge of just walking away from it. I was probably in about week 5. And the classes were just dreadfully boring and just dumb classes. I remember just the utter stupidity of it. And I was ready to just walk away. But I knew if I walked away, debate kind of things that people around me were starting to have, not everybody, but some people, I would not have been able to participate. And I knew that would mean I would spend a lifetime not understanding the world enough to be able to engage in this level of conversation. So I'd have to just sit and listen to other people talk, some of whom were college educated and some of whom were not, but were very engaged because they just were interested in the world, right? Like many people who watch this stream who have not gone to college, but they're just thinkers, right? So but I knew that I wouldn't have it in me to be a thinker like that. I would be too busy doing other things. And so I didn't, so I was on my way to dropping out. I went into a library at this 2-year community college where I went. It was a very small library. And something clicked, man, just something. I saw something and I said, okay, I could do this. And that was it, man. It happened to be kind of social work, sociology kind of thing. Man, Elijah, to this day, I
The
have
rest
no
is
idea what
history.
happened. Yeah.
What do you mean? Like when you have no idea what happened, or just like how these events unfolded, you know?
Yeah, I have no idea
Mhm.
what happened in my mind that told me, hey, you could do, you could do this thing
Well,
right here.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's like, if we were to like rewind, and go pre-college in your life, I'm themes, maybe, I'm just guessing, like
Yeah.
themes that, um, illuminate like your passions. And it seemed like that thing that you read also maybe aligned with something
Nah,
that
no, I
is
didn't. I
always
had no
you.
passions. I'm telling you, man, I had no passions. Well, I would no, I was never. Today, I don't have any passions really. I'm not a very passionate person, but no, I
Really?
had no passions.
No passions to
Eh,
not even today. What about golf
Uh,
or like
yeah, I play
teaching?
golf,
Or
teaching.
that's not a passion? Or
Well, maybe
what is a
teaching is
passion, I
maybe
guess?
teaching because yeah, I'm not really sure actually. That's kind of interesting. Something I really love to do, and but maybe I think the thing that is most. I think what I think it was just I was really tired of not understanding the world. Honestly,
Mm.
I just, you know, I couldn't.
What spaces were you in where that seemed where that the pressure
Just
to
like
understand the world
conversations with
was so important?
friends, conversations with just people who I knew. Um, my girlfriend at the time, her and her father would have these big long debates, and I'd just be watching them go back and forth like a tennis match. Might do here and
Right.
here and here and here, and I had nothing to contribute, and it just
Yeah.
felt. And it's not that I felt stupid at all, like because I was like, yeah, it's fine, I live in life, but I didn't. But I just didn't. I felt like, come on, man, like,
But you felt like you
is this
couldn't
it?
contribute? It,
Couldn't contribute anything at all, nothing. It was just sometimes
right.
just a comment. But if they had said like, well, what do you mean? I wouldn't have anything to draw on. I just had no way of organizing reality. So that's the
Right.
thing that just for whatever reason, this moment, it was about prisons. I always say this. It was a book about prisons. And I just said, oh, that'd be interesting to work at a prison, to understand the minds of prisoners, not
Mm.
fix people who are prisoners, not lower the rate of recidivism and that kind of stuff. None of that. It was just like, it'd be really interesting to understand prisons
To
and
see,
prisoners.
right.
And
Just
then
to
I just,
be,
yep.
yeah, go
And
ahead.
but
You then you
that went behind me. I never, by the time I actually enrolled in classes 5 weeks late, 2 weeks later, whatever. But then ultimately started classes about 8 weeks later. I there was I was never going to work in a prison. I wasn't part of it, but I was just that was the doorway that opened. Say, okay, this is it. You're going to now understand the world. And
and then
so then
do you think you relieved that part of yourself that was like, oh, at a certain point, you're like, I feel like I can't contribute to like, to conversations or being a part of these important conversations. Like
I didn't
eventually
think
you,
they were even important conversations.
yeah,
Really, I just felt like because they were debates about God and religion and right and wrong and morality and
right,
ethics and
yeah,
fairness, right? Born in
yeah,
the 90s, Sean is saying this thing about fairness. It's like that kind of stuff. It's like, well, I don't know. What do I think about fairness? Like, I just never thought. It's like my brain was just the light. It was like I was on a dimmer, you know, and the
hmm,
dimmer was up maybe a 25% of the way. Now, people around me might say, actually, bro, your dimmer was up about a third of the way, but no one would say it was up to halfway at all. Yeah. So it was really, yeah, it was really a very kind of interesting thing. And so that was it, man. And I don't know. And to this day, I'm not certain that it was a good thing because I could have been probably really uh, living a good life back in, without all this stuff in
yeah.
my brain.
What do you envision that would have looked like? Can you envision that? What
Yeah,
it would have looked like?
maybe I would have really just lived just like maybe I would have had a family. would have had kids,
Mhm.
just living, going to work, having kids, playing golf. I don't know, having friends. I would have had a friendship network. I'd be playing music for sure still, like in bands, but not as my major line of work. I may have made a lot of money, actually. Probably not, though. I don't think I'm destined to make money. That's not part of my thing. I didn't ever really want to make money.
Maybe you would have been a famous rock star, you know?
Who knows? Probably not, though. I don't know. Hey, but who
That's so
knows? Yeah,
interesting
maybe
to
so.
think
I mean, am I
about.
drumming? I think I'm a better drummer than I am a teacher. But
You gotta
if that means
make a little.
anything to
Mhm.
you,
It does.
but
It
I think
makes
that's
sense.
probably true.
I think that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a set downstairs or anything
Nah,
still?
I sold them to the son of a former student of mine about
Dang.
6 years ago.
That's cool,
Yeah.
but I wish you still had a set.
Yeah.
You still need that. It's part of you.
Yeah. Nah, I had a big, huge set with like to 18. I don't know how many toms did I have? Like 8 toms and probably about 15 cymbals. I had a massive set, man. It used to drive me nuts when I would play out somewhere and have to load it all in my car. Shit. I was like, oh my God. Took me
Yeah.
forever, man. All the hardware was the worst possible thing. All like the cymbal stands and everything. Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to let go. I mean,
No, it's not,
when you love
man.
anything, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, Steven, is that Black Sabbath concert? Is it on YouTube? I've been golfing for a week. I haven't had time to look, but I saw Ozzy's final concert. I saw Black Sabbath in concert in 1975, by the way. 1975, bro. Ozzy just had his final concert. All right, I'll have to look it up. Wait, hang on. Hang on, I got to see another couple other questions. Yeah, the issue of fairness, by the way, is really important for me because I'm from the working class, man. And it's just, people from the working class who work really, really hard, and you're told if you work really hard, you'll be fine. Fairness is important because, you're oftentimes working for hourly wages, and salary, these are all of the professions and stuff. I don't know. There's something about you work hard and you play hard, and there's something about fairness is really important. It's important for everybody, but there's just honesty and fairness is really, really important in the working class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So,
half of most of my family is like working class, so I feel that. Yeah.
yeah, you feel it, right? You work really hard and you play really hard, and you expect, you work hard, you do a good job, and then you get paid for it, and you don't want to get screwed over. You're not making a ton of money. So the money you make is the money you expect to make is the money that you really want to make, you need to make, and you should make. And there's a fairness thing.
Right.
And when people come along and really kind of
and also how
jeopardize that, it's a problem.
Yeah. And I just feel like maybe, I don't know, like maybe the narrative surrounding what's the ladder of possibility, like depending on what class you're in,
Yeah.
and how people feel like, oh, it doesn't matter if I work hard anyway, because like I already have a ceiling. And
listen, you're probably not gonna get to that one place where you might, right? You go to school, you go to college, and maybe you major in finance or you major in something, I don't know, but maybe you just luck out and you go into that one job and you have a mentor, and then somehow the doorway to making a lot of money just opens magically for you. Man, it wasn't supposed to, but it does. And like, whoa, how did I get here? Right? When you're in the working class, you can start your own business or whatever, but that's hard, man. That's really difficult. So you sort of have an idea of where you're going to be in 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years if you don't hurt yourself.
Right. It's so interesting. Like I wonder how, because it makes me think of just my dad and like certain skill sets that he had, just as being a great people person. You know, like he was a hustler, and also I just
Yeah.
wonder like if you're in the working class, like how much you have to take advantage of like the natural abilities that you've developed. You know,
Yeah.
like versus like, you know, if you're in like a wealthier class or like middle class, you don't have to like, or maybe I'm making assumptions, but maybe your natural skill sets aren't as important because you have resources that would like compensate for that. But
Yeah.
if you're in like the
Yeah.
working class, you really gotta like the survival mode is like use what I was given. Like what are my attributes that
Yeah.
um or
Yeah. I got one for you. How about this? You're not going to skate along. Yeah. You're not going to skate along. You're not going to just be in some job where you're like, yeah, you know, I'm in this job, but I don't really do much of anything and I still get my
right,
salary. And
right,
if you're from the working class, like, or everybody, I mean, money isn't the whole thing for everyone, right? It's not the biggest thing, but you know, but people have a certain dream. You want to have a car, you want to have a house, you want to have kids, you're going to pay for your kids, you want to go on vacation. I mean, there's things you want to do, man, you know, and so you want to push it. Maybe you want to go to Ireland and trace your family roots, maybe play golf or something. But if you're from the working class, man, I mean, increasingly you can be, you know, a plumber, even like a union plumber or a welder or electrician, and make pretty good money, man. Make more money than I make. But
great money is yeah. Mhm.
but you know, that's no longer it's some level working class then, right? I mean, there's like the working class mentality is working class work, but then there's the working class uh pay
Mhm.
salary band, right? Wage band. And those are two different things that we're talking about.
Right, right.
But
Did you differentiate it between three? You said the working class mentality, class pay, and then working class.
yeah,
What was that third thing?
well, the salary band in the
So yeah.
you know, like for me, I know that I can think back to my life. What I learned as soon as I started working is, hey, it's work. You know, you work with your body, right? You know, I did all sorts. I was a hustler. I was a hustler, right? So I started
Yeah.
hustling. Dude,
Mhm.
I was hustling at 12 years old, man. I was going up and down the street, knocking on doors and being like, people knew me. Like we had lots of elderly people on the street, so people knew me, and I'd be like, "Hey, what do you need to have me do, man? Let me clean out your
Yeah.
garage, clean out your basement, do this, put your screens in, do the whatever it was." I would do stuff for people. They'd call me and like, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" I had lawn jobs, you know. I'd lined them up, man.
Yeah.
I was always hustling. Clean out your
You were a 12-year-old
gutters, you
contractor.
know. Yeah,
12,
dude.
12-year-old
It was like,
contractor.
yeah, exactly. I was like a low level at that level, right? And then, and I didn't charge a lot because that's also why they like me because I was
Mhm.
not, I just never knew, it just wasn't my thing, right? I really more wanted to help people. So be kind of like, well, pay me whatever you want to pay me kind of thing. That's how I kind of operated. It's kind of how
Yeah,
I
that's
operate
cool.
today.
Yeah. Who,
So,
how did you learn
yeah.
to get a job at 12? You know,
I
like
just
who
did. Well, I had to because my mom
teach?
didn't have any money. So
Mhm.
I saw I was already cutting my own lawn, and I was already cutting the lawn for my grandmother. So I'm like, well, that's pretty easy, man. I'm cutting my lawn, so I'll just cut the neighbor's lawn, right?
Right.
And I'll cut the woman
Okay.
down the street, and I'll cut. You know, it was just like I'll do that, and then before I knew it, I had all sorts of jobs lining up, and
Mhm. Were you
I was
getting paid to
hustling.
cut yeah. Were you getting paid to cut your
No, not my
grandmother's lawn?
mom's. My own house, I didn't get paid.
But your
No, and I didn't
grandmother?
get paid for cutting my grandmother's lawn.
Okay. So we're okay. I guess I was trying to figure out where this idea of I can get paid to do if I
Well, I had a
you
lawnmower, and I saw other people cutting other people's lawns and getting paid, right? So
so I was like, if
I'm
they
like,
can do
yeah,
it,
I
I
can
can
do
do it.
that. I can do that. I can push a lawnmower. I know what I'm doing. So
You got the charm of a 12-year-old. You know, they'll
dude,
choose you
I
over
got
the
we have a 12-year-old cutting our lawn right now, and then like he's our neighbor across the street, and like I really pushed it. It's like I don't know if he's ready. I'm like, dude, he's ready, man. Bring him over.
That's
So
cool.
he missed
Yeah.
his pieces in the lawn and that kind of stuff. I'm like, don't worry about it. It's great. I love seeing this 12-year-old kid out there, like, put the lawnmower handles up above his head, man, and he's pushing it along. I
That's
love it.
awesome.
So,
No, that's
and I want to
huge.
support that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing development for him.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
it's a
anyway,
good thing. Yeah.
so when I was young and I get done with a full day of working, and I'm, like sweaty and tired, and we stop, maybe a buddy of mine and myself, we'd stop at a bar, one of the bars we frequent, on the way home, and we'd just sit at the bar stool and have a beer. That was it,
Yeah.
just a beer. And then we go home. And just like with all the other working class dudes in there, mostly men, just having beers. We just had one, and it was like, okay, that's perfect, man. And you felt good. Like I felt good.
Yeah.
I just put in a full day,
I just did
man.
hard work.
Yeah. I was 17
Right.
years old, 18 years old, 19, it was tough. I'm sweaty. I'm tired. But you
I would
feel
feel
good, man.
I've
Yeah.
had like I've had like landscaping jobs. I did a demolition job,
Yeah.
did like, painting, especially like the demolition job, like with the freaking, sledgehammer just going at
Yeah.
these walls
Yeah.
of concrete, just,
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
oh, I feel that.
I remember as a kid, I think one time I was maybe 16, hauling. I got hired to one of my hustling jobs, just hired to haul concrete, man. Hey, we got these 5 wheelbarrows. Grab one of them, man. The truck's pulling up. You're going to take them down this driveway. And I'm holding on for dear life, man, with like 80 pounds of 100 pounds or whatever it was of concrete in this.
Heavy. Yeah.
Man, 120. I don't know what it is because you're on the wheel, right? But all I know is do not spill this, man. And I'm holding on for dear life. And that as a boy, as a young man, that was more important than anything in the world, to be able to do that. And all my different guys, and some older guys with big muscles, they're doing it, and I'm going to do it. And they're like, hold on there, young man. And I'm like, fuck, hell
Respect.
yeah, I'm going to hold on, man. The respect. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
man. And the shame if I would have spilled it, like, oh,
The stakes. Yeah, the
stakes.
stakes.
Yeah.
Of that. That's
Yes.
so cool.
So that's like,
That's the best.
That's the working class. You don't get that, man. If your job, you're the only job you've ever had is like, you were, who knows? I don't, you just don't get that. It's like sports and testing your body and throwing your body around and crashing into other people. There's something about that has great value.
Yeah. It's one of the best feelings especially as a man,
Yeah.
that the labor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that.
That's cool.
So
that's so cool. I remember the pride I would get from like when I was, like 10, 11, 12, my grandfather was cutting the trees down, getting the logs put in the truck, and like, or just anything, just, helping out my grandfather and doing that hard was just like so rewarding. Whatever it was. Yeah.
And that's what I have a feeling that some of these people like Elon Musk or whoever some of these people are, they needed a couple of those jobs when they were young, man. You know what I mean? They would have felt less of emasculated, or somehow that just would have been good for them to have that.
Right. Yeah.
Might have been nicer. Bill Maher, maybe he'd be so mean in his comedy,
Right.
Just like get some of that testosterone out of you.
Interesting. Like, how does it come out?
Yeah.
How are we expressing or expressing?
Yeah, for sure.
Sam's turning red pill. He's gonna say, "Go to the gym instead."
Yeah, right. Oh, is that it? That's the red pill. Yeah, I'm gonna be like, wait, who's the guy over there that was in jail in Romania or whatever?
Andrew Tate.
Oh yeah, the Tate. I'm gonna be one of the. You and I will be the. Let's do the Tate things, man.
Yep. No.
The Sam and Elijah show. Yeah, go on, lift weights.
Yeah. All right.
Throw loads around. Yeah.
We'll wear tank tops next Wednesday just to get it started.
Yeah.
You know, gotta wear a
right.
tank top.
One of you
Start
has
it
to
off.
shave your head
Oh yeah, you got to do that. Yeah, man. Yeah.
by choice.
I'll do it. I'll do it. Keep your image,
All
Sam.
right. My head's almost bald anyway, so
No,
whatever.
your image is you're looking good. I got you.
All right.
I got you. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, man. Why don't we blow out? I think we'll be back on next Wednesday. To be fair, the gym is a good alternate. It's not as good as building something with your hands. Absolutely, man. Yeah, and having a good sweat
It's
from
the
hard
best.
workout feels great.
But
But
do it right after this.
yeah, but it's not the same, man. It's not the same as that stuff.
Well, because you don't see the results the same way. Like you can be finished your job, you know, whatever that labor job is, and
Yeah.
you see the results right in front of you, like compliment. And
Yeah.
then too, I think.
It
I don't know.
and so when I was a kid, that was what was really important. That I had a job where I would get sweaty and work my muscles, and it wasn't sitting in a desk and like making money or whatever. Like whatever it was, it wasn't that. It wasn't a job like that. I didn't. Yeah, it was getting sweaty and doing that. Like I didn't have any of that. But what other kids in the other school district or at a different socioeconomic status, they had that. They looked at their dads or the men around them, and they're like, okay, well, I should be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. And mine wasn't that, man. Mine was I should, do what the men around me are doing, and that's working with your hands and getting sweaty.
Yeah.
And the women also around me in that sense, that's what they appreciated that,
Right.
And so that was really important.
It's still so common. I don't know. I notice, just or the desire for, for masculinity to show up in some ways. Or like how does masculinity show up?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, man.
Mm-hmm. That is cool. Glad we got into this towards the end. That's
Before we go, I did want to say for the summer course, week 1 is ending tonight. So for the couple of students who are listening to this before midnight, make sure you get your syllabus quiz in tonight and your week 1 quiz done tonight. And then week 2 starts officially again today. For those of you who are watching in the public, class number 8 will be up tomorrow at noonish time. Just after you're done with this stream, just hit the Social 19 channel logo, and then if you scroll down, you'll be able to see this semester's playlist. Yeah, there's some good stuff. The students are loving class number 3. Class number 4 is a good one, choice versus chance. So, and then this week has been racial discrimination. So, Elijah, your conversations might be shifting a little bit from being offended to white privilege and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited
What
to see
is
what we get
white
into.
privilege?
What is white privilege? Who is oppressed? You did the alternate history class called Those Black Devils this week. And then of course just the basics of like what are the different skin tones? How do we get different skin tones? What part of our DNA impacts that? What other things does our DNA impact or not? How much is it cultural? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, all these classes. Oh my gosh.
It's somebody wrote in the Discord, they were like, I really am enjoying the classes so far. And I was like, to be honest, the summer course we've put together this year should be like our best of classes, because every one of these is like a classic that's like, regardless of how long ago we recorded it, it still stays. It's still really good.
They're great. Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're available via the podcast too. So,
all right, man. Thanks, everybody. Like, enjoy whatever you enjoy. Yeah, enjoy it. It won't last. Whatever is going on won't last. That's the nature of it. So,
And